Welcome to the ACS Technical Advisory Board podcast series, where we talk all things tech including data, cyber, AI, blockchain, and Internet of Things. Meet your host, Dr. David Cook, Vice President of the Australian Computer Society's Technical Boards. David is a technology advocate dedicated to advances and progression of computing and human-computer interaction. In today's episode, David will be talking with ACS AI Ethics Committee member, Baker Tamory. Join us as we discuss simplifying AI, technology and health, and the hopes for future state of AI.
Today, we're talking with Baker Tamory. Baker is a senior data and AI specialist at Microsoft, and he has a passion for delivering citizen impacting outcomes. He's got over 24 years of experience in various sectors in focus on technology, and he's an active member of the ACS National Committee on AI and Ethics. Baker, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, David. Pleasure to be here.
Now, I know that you've got a passion about simplifying AI. What does that look like when you try and translate and get people to get past all of the, the high-end technology side of things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So let me just add some context. So a lot of us already use AI, whether directly or indirectly. If you use social media, you already use AI. But some of the simplification of AI, there's a lot of times where you may end up going to the doctor's office, for example, or getting some x-rays. A lot of the early detection, a lot of the imaging analysis happens using AI. And that is a bunch of really complex diagnoses, a lot of complex issues and diseases that AI really simplifies to the radiologist, for example. So there's that angle of simplifying AI. The other aspect of simplifying AI is, imagine from a cybersecurity threat, there's massive amounts of data, millions and millions of data points a second. It's impossible for a human to go through that. And what AI helps to do is simplify that by extracting anomalies, outliers, and simplifying it in a way so that the person who is responsible for cybersecurity is able to make a decision. So there's a lot of that simplification that I think people think it should be much more complex, but when you demystify it, it's actually quite simple.
I guess we see that now in all of the different apps. I mean, everyone's trying to sell me into a generative AI app of some kind. And the key selling point is, once we do this, your conversation gets summarized into a mind map and you can see the key points and you can make sense of all of the complexity in one kind of one shot. That's a key selling point, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you make a very, very valid point. So there was a general notion that with co-pilots and with generative AI, you're going to start writing worse, or you're not going to write as eloquently. What I have learned and experienced in my own personal experience is that it's actually made me a better writer, because it helps me articulate myself in a much more articulate manner with clearer, more concise sentences. And I learn from that and say, hey, I should write differently. And it's not because I want to mimic the AI, but it helps me understand how I can even simplify my own train of thought. So that's a very, very valid point.
I really, it's that side of things that I really enjoy seeing develop now. The fact that people who might be experienced writers but didn't realize that they were always writing in a very technical manner or
That's
in
right.
a very sophisticated manner that was for themselves,
That's
perhaps
right.
not for the reader.
Yes.
And what AI hopefully does, if it works out well, is to introduce more people to a larger number of themes and a greater level of understanding, even if it's in a condensed way that we can make, but in a way that we can make sense of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about health. They say there's a lot of information available, and now and you alluded to that earlier about technology and data analytics and the way we've got this enormous pile of different things. How do you think we should work in terms of making sure that we get a better level of interaction to sort of individual people taking control of the data and using it themselves rather than just hoping for somebody to tell them what to do?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I'll try to use an analogy to kind of make sense of it, and I'll dive into the details. So up and until this point, if I could phrase it this way, we have had a fantastic laser beam called search, and we would point it to an ocean of data. And wherever the laser beam hits, that's the information that we have, and then we would try to try to understand that information. With generative AI, we no longer search the data. We start interacting with the data. And what that means is instead of having a laser focus into a specific area of the ocean, we actually can interact with the whole ocean. So what does that mean? Case in point, earlier we talked about the health information. There's hundreds of papers that get released on a daily basis. How can we expect a person in the front line, a clinician, a scientist, or a doctor, have access to the latest and greatest? Even if they have access to it, does it make sense for them, for their demographics, and for their patients? So we live in a day and age where now you can, using natural language, ask information, and then behind the scenes, there's systems, specifically AI, that is able to extract all the information and present it back to you, accessing the whole ocean. Why is that different, and what used to happen before? uh, that had to be architected before, so that you had to have a bunch of data scientists, data engineers, extracting all the data, creating a very bespoke custom application to be able to do that for you. Now it could take 5 seconds.
I get that, and I think that part of the ongoing challenge, I suppose, is to go back to what you said, making sure that we talk about it in natural language,
That's
that we
right.
don't overcomplicate the terms. For some of us, I recently released a particular paper on the histopathology analysis of renal cancer cells, and every second word has got 4 or 5 syllables in it, and you need to have a dictionary there to work out what they mean.
That's right.
And that's not helpful in terms of coming to good outcomes for people. So particularly in health, but it applies to everything in life, I suppose. So
Absolutely.
one of the things I liked what you said, which is just because we have data doesn't mean to say we have to use it.
That's
What do
right.
you mean by that?
So let me give you the example first, and then maybe I can elaborate on that. So let's say a private insurer has your historical data. They know the type of providers you've used. They know some of the illnesses you have. Now, just because they have that historical data on yourself, that doesn't mean they can raise your premiums based on what they would project that this person is going to become more ill, or would have additional requirements from additional service providers. So just because they have that historical data doesn't mean ethically or morally they should use it to increase your premiums. So that was the example I gave earlier.
What about in terms of how we're going with technology? And I guess we talked about this issue of agency. How do we get people, and I mean people in general,
Yeah.
not academics, because to some extent it's their job, but to be specific. But how do we get the average everyday person to be more specific about taking control of the direction of technology, so that they're actually making sure that it's useful to them in a much more specific sense, personally and individually? How do we do that? How do we claim back some agency?
That's an excellent point, and that's a point that I'm actually very passionate about. So I feel the normal average person needs to take agency in terms of steering the technology towards what makes sense for them, whether it's them, their society, their community, the culture that they live in. And one of the how do they do it? One of the things that I want to break down, this mystical notion that you have to be an academic to understand AI. You have to be technical. I'm not a computer scientist. I don't know how to code. There's a lot of fundamentals of AI that actually is based on society, on the society's norms, on what we accept as norms. So if I had a magic wand, what I would love for people to do is take more agency and drive their personal agenda so that the AI makes sense for them, rather than being led with the direction of where AI is going. So, as an example, Australia is one of the countries that do incredibly well with parliamentary hearings, for example, where people can actually voice their concerns. When's the last time, if you don't like, let's say, for example, a road next to where you live, when's the last time you also raised an issue with your local member of parliament about the direction of AI? And what I would love for people to do is actually take more ownership in what AI means for them, rather than AI being dictated to them.
So I guess it's about the transfer of seeing AI as something sort of hypothetical, and
That's right.
turning it into something which is much more tangible, and getting people to really involve themselves, getting their hands dirty, so to speak, on things.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people don't realize how much AI they already use on a daily basis. And if AI works really well, it typically is invisible to the user. And because the fact that it's invisible, you should be more aware of it, and absolutely take more ownership, take more control, and steer the direction of where AI should be and what it means for you.
So I want you to, in your crystal ball, I want you to think ahead and say, what is it that we hope for? What is it that you'd like to see if we were looking about things in, say, the year 2030, so 5 years from now, 6 years from now? What do you think AI will look like, and what are we hoping to find?
That's a very good question. I think what we would find is more individuals understanding how 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 much better they're able to do their job, or their thinking, or their thought process, by using AI as additional leverage. And what I mean by that is, it would help individuals do the same things that they're doing in a much faster, potentially better way, in a way that requires less effort. So I think that's one direction that definitely gonna head towards. I think the other direction is, there will be so many more new use cases, so many more new companies, ideas, and products and services that at the moment we cannot think of, but because AI is going to unlock that potential. What I mean by that is, let's say, for example, today there are people who want to do something with start up, be an entrepreneur, and start up a business, but because they may have a knowledge gap, or because they need to leverage a designer, for example, they're not able to do it. The barriers of entry is higher. I think what AI is going to do in the next 5 years is really bring down those barriers, down to a level where anyone can start using AI. And finally, I think it's going to help us as an economy, um, punch even higher above our weight. And if you look at Australia, for example, for a very small population, we are very technically advanced. I think AI is just going to help increase that trajectory even further.
Baker Tamory, thank you so much for joining us today.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
To find out more about how the ACS is powering Australia's technology brilliance, visit us at our website, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Want to get involved with the ACS technical boards? Email us at tab@acs.org.au and tell us a bit about yourself. Join us for more thought leadership, ideas, and information through our other podcasts on the ACS YouTube, Facebook, or on LinkedIn.